Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Essydo Podcast. My name is Emre Şentürk, and I'm your host of Essydo Podcast, but also founder of Essydo Magazine, the online magazine for, I would say it's kind of a rebellion against mainstream media, in the most positive sense there is, to be honest, because the vision of Essydo Magazine, as well as this podcast, is basically to get away from the mainstream idea that we just need to summarize information and then think we are very intelligent and cognitive able. It is rather about analyzing stuff, analyzing very important political and societal developments. So far, I have been concentrating a lot on the political side. My last podcast was about motivation and why is it a scam. Maybe you're interested in it because this topic today is also kind of related to that. It's about personal development, and the topic is today weakness and signs of weakness. You know, how do we know, or how can we identify people who are weak? Why should we identify them, and what can we do in order to tackle our weaknesses if we happen to see one of those things very predominantly in our characters, which might well be. I mean, there's nothing bad to it as long as you can locate the problems and realize that you need to work on them. That's perfectly fine. So I really like to discuss some of these developmental things. It's very important because on the road to achieve cognitive success, you always have to be you have to have very clear principles, be self-reflective, and also work on your mental skills, right? And these are guidance points and also kind of feedback points that you need in order to go back and reevaluate your character on a daily basis, on a rolling basis. I mean, it doesn't have to be daily, of course, but you have to be periodically able to take a step back and reevaluate yourself and your character and where you want to go, how it aligns with your goals, right? So today I'm going to talk about 5 signs of weakness that you should eliminate, or that you can also use to watch other people and analyze them. This is very important. And I will start off not with the first point, but just explaining why weakness is a bad thing. I mean, a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but some people might argue that and say weakness is not a bad thing at all. You can be weak, right? You can be vulnerable and weak, and there's nothing bad to it. It's a totally normal trait. I disagree with that because whenever something cruel happened in history, it was born out of weakness. I mean, if we just think back at the Holocaust, right? None of that happened from a position of strength, right? It always happened from a position of weakness. The perception of being in danger, feeling weak and responding with cruelty is also something that happens on a daily basis. If there's somebody who gets bullied all the time, right? Somebody who feels very weak and who's, who's very hurt, right? In this case, you hurt somebody and this person gets weaker and weaker and weaker, right? At some point, the person responds with in a very cruel way or a very violent way. So this is why weakness is essentially bad. Only strong people have the ability to be balanced and also enter balanced interactions with their peers, right? Therefore, weakness is something that we should eliminate. Weakness is nothing to strive for. Weakness is essentially bad, and strength is essentially good, on a very rudimentary level, so to say. And this leads me to the first point, because now people might associate weakness and strength with the physical abilities of people, right? And this is the first mistake to make, because physical and cognitive strength or weakness, from whichever perspective you want to look at it, are not equal, right? The physical strength is definitely a factor that helps you at times, is giving you confidence, health, obviously, and also keeps you biologically in a state where you can better process things. Because if you have a healthy body, and generally are in good health, the strength that you gain from that is also displayed in your cognitive abilities. But there's no such thing that the cognitive ability or the cognitive strength or the strength of your character is comparable to the physical strength that you have, right? Obviously, cognitive and character strength is superior to everything else. And there are numerous examples of that. I mean, if we just think, and I'm again drifting away to a very extreme example, and this is Stephen Hawking, right? He was an incredibly strong person. He was incredibly strong, and no one in the world, even I mean, basically everyone in the world was stronger than him in physical terms, but in cognitive terms, barely none, right? And this created a respect for him as a person, and people respected him for who he was and what he did, without being able to actually move and being actually physically functional. I mean, if he would have lived 200 years earlier, I mean, his cognitive strength would have never been developed in such a way, right? So he was an incredibly strong person, and this is what weak people make. They make the mistake that they equate physical and cognitive strength and put them on the same level. There's no such thing, right? A lot of intelligent people were not physically strong, or at least they didn't appear so. And on the other side, a lot of strong people in the physical sense are not as strong cognitively. But no matter what, the strong people never tend to hurt those intelligent people, because the respect creates an aura around those people that keeps physical violence away from them. You know, in very, very seldom cases, we have the situation where very intelligent people are violently attacked, right? Or deliberately violently attacked in such a sense. So this is the first main point. The second one is the aspect of not being or taking accountability, right? Making excuses for the mistakes you've done. Basically, if we think about our lives, and everybody knows that it's just as certain as death, right? That we make mistakes. Mistakes are so common and certain, so natural actually, because it is just, if we wouldn't make mistakes, there wouldn't be a balance to life, right? And the experience shows that everyone does a mistake every now and then, and that's perfectly fine. Obviously, it is not a good feeling. Nobody likes to make mistakes, especially if others are harmed by your mistakes. Can be in very different situations, but we never like that, and we don't want this to happen. It's a very uncomfortable situation. Nobody wants to be in this position. Obviously, nobody wants to be. But even more so, we need to, we need to be held accountable and accept that, and hold ourselves accountable for making those mistakes, learn from them, and also be strong enough to say, well, I made this mistake, I tried to learn from it, and I try to be a better person afterwards. I mean, there is a very interesting difference between mistakes and the nature of mistakes. Obviously, if you do this because you were careless, this is something very bad. You know, if you, let's assume you're driving in your car, just looking at your phone, causing an accident, and the other person on the other car, or you hit a bicycle rider or something like that. It's a very bad situation. You don't want to be in that because you were careless. You know, you could have been easily avoided. But if not, and mistakes can also be unforeseen, happens. But making excuses makes you a very weak person. You don't You don't get respect by pulling away with excuses and pushing all the responsibility to others and point fingers onto others. This is not what strong people would do, and therefore, because we all make mistakes, we all live through them, right? Being strong enough to say, well, I did this, yeah, obviously it was a mistake, I will learn from them, is not even a strong character trait. It's just a normal character trait. And even more so, weak people make excuses. Now let's turn to the third point, which is not enduring hardship or being unable to live through hard times. Just as certain as you are going to make mistakes, you're also going to live through hard times, depending on what you feel is hard in your life. And this is very pretty much dependent on how you are living and what your circumstances are. Some people, or many people, tend to say that they have the hardest time out there. This is obviously not the case. Everyone dependent on how they live, what the circumstances are, and what kind of dangers they're exposed to, what kind of needs and wishes and necessities their life brings. According to them, people are going to live through hardships, and this is totally fine, and we need to accept that. There are some basic levels of hardship that people should endure, right? And this is what I'm talking about. If you're not able to live through this minimum amount of hardship, this makes you a very weak person. If you're not able to go through bad times and accept that during this period you are going to be sad and have negative feelings, and say, all right, you know what, obviously it's not a good situation I'm in right now, but I'm strong enough to go through it, then this is a very normal trait. This doesn't even make you strong. You know, this is also a very normal thing to live through hard times, not even with a smile, but be neutral and accept it and accept the negative emotions that your life brings. Because if you don't do it, why should life give you positive emotions? If you think from the perspective of life, right? Why should life give you something positive if you're not willing to go through negative things in a very disciplined manner without complaining, right? Obviously, if you're living through hard times, this is surely not a good thing. You can be sad, you can be angry, you can be disappointed. These are all valid feelings. But giving up and being frustrated because you're living through them and asking questions like, why is this happening to me, isn't going to get you very far. You have to endure it. You have to have the ability to endure it and go through it without much complaining. Obviously, you don't have to cheer and smile. This is not what I'm saying. But if you really want to eliminate weakness in your life, you need to go through things without complaining. Just face it. Everyone's facing their battles and it's totally fine. Ask for help if you need it, but don't complain. Complaining is something... I mean, you don't complain when something good happens to you in life. And this is what separates weak from strong people, because strong people just accept it and say, okay, well, then it is what it is. We have to go through it, and they'll do it. And they take whatever is needed and what is necessary in order to turn this whole thing around and make something positive out of it. And then the positive things will also be very in an extreme manner and come faster than you might expect, right? This is actually a good transition to the fourth point that I'm going to make, is being overly concerned with oneself. So I just talked about the perspective of life. And I find it extremely, extremely awkward and annoying. And personally, I cannot understand how people overestimate their importance in life. If you think from the perspective of life, how big life is, I mean, I can again start from the extremes and talk about galaxies and planets and whatnot. You being a piece of dust, how can you put yourself in the focus of everything that you do and think about? How can that be? Don't you think that this is actually unfair to life? Why should life value you as one single individual to such a degree as you do, right? And this is some kind of the feeling of entitlement that a lot of people have. And I don't think this is something healthy. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve anything, right? And you're not in a position to determine whether you deserve something or not. This is not up to you to assess, right? If you think about very great people in our history books, I'm just thinking about Vincent van Gogh, right? One of the greatest painters the world has ever seen. This guy lived a miserable life. I mean, certainly he didn't deserve it. I mean, why is his art famous now, right? Did he deserve that? And I don't think that we should have a feeling of entitlement. If we do something, whatever we do, we should do it for the sake of doing it. You know, if it's something you're talented in, you're interested in, whatever, I think this is totally fair. And being overly concerned with how I feel and, you know, my mood is down today, my mood is up today I feel like this, today I feel like... I mean, first of all, nobody cares. Second of all, it only will make you sad, because in the end, being constantly focused on your mood will drain your energy. You will not be able to face life and the beautiful things that life offers to you and that life also demands from you, right? Because everyone has a talent, and if you're not giving this talent by kind of developing it back to life, then you're missing the point, basically. And with missing the point makes you basically sad, right? You're not very fulfilled. And this is why I say the feeling of entitlement is something that weak people have. If you think that you deserve something or you are entitled to something, then you're a very weak person, because you have on what ground can you say that you're entitled to something, right? This is not up to you to decide. Everything will fall in place. So I think going through a life without expectations and with the vision or with the mindset that you only have something to give and not something to take is the healthiest way to approach everything that you basically encounter. Now we turn to the fifth point, and this is actually one of my favorites, what weak people do. And if you have listened until now, first of all, thank you. Thank you very much for listening to me and giving some weight to my words. Maybe think about it, or maybe you don't and want to enter a discussion. So feel free to write me an email, obviously, and also visit the webpage essydo.com. And the reason why I'm saying this is because this point is something that I personally think, and this is something that you're not often encountering on social media or television or whatever media you're consuming, right? The other ones, more or less you heard about them, probably, right? Maybe not in this constellation and maybe not in this wording, but I figured a lot of people think the same way or have like parts of what I say also incorporated into their thinking, and it's perfectly fine. But this one I don't think you've ever heard, and so therefore I would really like to present it to you, what I think is the fifth point of weak people that they display, basically. And it is the need of proper form to process information. I think this is so laughable that people need to be fed in the right way to process information. Somebody is explaining something through a video or a graphic or a presentation, and people can process the information better. And all of a sudden they say, oh, well, that's true, and that's so great and amazing, right? Can be the most basic stuff. You can say trees are green. You can make a presentation about how trees are green, and they say, oh, this is the most deep diving and far-reaching stuff that I've ever seen. It's such a great analysis. That's not the case, right? It's just a great presentation. It's visually, properly formatted or processed or put into a format that people can easily digest, and all of a sudden it's great information. Making assessments on pieces of information based on their format or how easily they are processable according to the layman, right, is to me one of the weakest forms of communication and the biggest signs of weakness there is in people. There's a reason why academic articles are mostly written out and not some funny pictures like in the first grade. Because the concepts that they are talking about, they don't need to be visualized more oftentimes, especially in humanities and, for example, political science. It's just plain text, 30 pages, plain text. Everything you need to know is properly explained. The words are picked perfectly, they are matched perfectly, the concepts are put in place. Why? Because intelligent people can process this. Intelligent people don't need some pictures and visualizations and whatnot in order to process information. And this is extremely, extremely weak from people if they say, well, this is boring, I don't understand it, can you make it more fun? Obviously, you could. I mean, if somebody is engaging with very interesting and very far-reaching, important stuff, analyzing this on the basis, and for example, I try to do that, right? Then this person cannot also try to feed you with this information in the proper form. If you are interested in developing yourself, it is your task to filter out and to analyze and to digest it. But making assessment on the quality of information based on how it is presented to you is actually cowardly, if you ask me, right? And on the other side, people often share stuff and talk about stuff with this kind of information that is well processed and well presented to them, right? Acting as if it would be as if this is high quality content, regardless of how superficial it is. And this is something that drives me crazy, because people think that you're cognitively advanced if you can present something in the proper way. I mean, maybe you are, because you understood how the people's minds work. Maybe I'm making a mistake here, thinking that only the subject matter matters, and the psychology of people is something that you can neglect and trust on, that people will analyze it in the same proper way as you do, right? Maybe it's a mistake from my point, right, or from my side. This might well be, but I'm pretty sure that if you really want to be considered a strong person, that you can see through things. And this is something that I saw in corporate life and academia. Those people who were not blinded by the form of presentation, but were rather engaging with the analysis and the contents that were presented, they were very successful and they moved very far in life, because they were able to say, okay, well, you're just try to blend me, and you're just making something up and making it look cool and smart. So therefore, I think it's a big sign of weakness if you value the presentation more than the content, just to sum it up. And maybe it is also something that I envisioned people would be more engaging with content that truly matters, on the content level. As I said, academic articles are such an enriching format, actually, but people just don't go through these articles, take their time and really try to know something, right? They want to appear to know something, which is fine, but it also makes you weak. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit different than the other episodes, to be honest. I mean, in such a way, enlisting 5 points and talking about them. If you like it, obviously I can do more of those things. Maybe I can also do an episode about signs of strength. What puts ahead people who appear very strong. So I enjoyed it. I hope you did too, and I hope to see you around for the next episode of Essydo podcast. So take care, have a good one, and bye.